we are not face to face, nor have we been for about 4 months now. And these are remarkable times. But it's in some sense, it's been very challenging, and you're going to hear some about that as we go through. But it's also been rewarding to see how our community of patients have come together to really still support the trial in the way that you always have by your participation as well. So that's why we're doing this on Zoom, and it's still lovely to see you. And in a sense, some of you might be here today who would have otherwise not been able to come and spend time with us. So next to say, yeah, that's the Zoom thing. We do have a chat function for you on Zoom. If you have any questions during the next hour and 10 minutes, please feel free to pop them on there. If you would like to change your name in order to remain anonymous, there's a function to do so. If you hover your cursor over the picture of your face or your initials, and you see those 3 adjacent horizontal dots on the side, if you click on that, you can change your name, should you want to, if you want to maintain your anonymity for the purposes of chatting and asking a question. But otherwise, feel free to pop your question up as well. So that's the thing. We are going to record, if it's okay with you. If it's not okay, perhaps now's the time to leave the discussion. We're going to record this because we understand that there's some men who have informed us that they're unable to join us right at this time. And so we'll be popping it up on our website later on in due course. And that's a shameless plug for the website that Jack worked very hard to bring together as well, there, neurosafeproof.com, where we put up some of our publications, our results, our plans for the future. But we do have to let you know that we'd like to record this. So who are we? Well, first of all, you're just about to hear from Mr. Greg Shaw, who's a consultant urologist. He's done an awful lot of the operating on the NeuroSAFE Proof study, and he's a consultant urologist at UCLH and Barts Health. Many of you have met him during your journey. My name's Owen. I'm also a urologist in training. I hope to be a consultant urologist in the future at some point. And this represents a period of my career where I'm really concentrating on giving all of my attention to this study and making the most of the opportunities for ourselves as a community of people interested in improving outcomes for men. Yeah, and there we go. We've also got 2 pathologists here, Eamon and Sarah. Both work currently in the Department of Pathology, which means looking at under the microscope at things in very, very high levels of detail and human tissue for that matter. So theirs is an exciting role. And we've got some really important people involved in making sure the study moves smoothly and is all held together. And there's an awful a lot of work that goes into that. And Jack Grierson is the main man on that. And Rosie, we're delighted to have her. She's come on board recently. And Dan has been very helpful in making sure this evening is smooth. Here's an overview of what you can expect this evening. We are currently doing the welcome and the housekeeping. Next up is Mr. Shaw, who's going to give us 10 minutes of the results of the feasibility study, which is the first 50 men. Then we're moving on to ideas and innovations for the future, which will be led by our pathology colleagues. Then it's on to updates and plans for the main study, which is the fully funded in a sense, but also the fully powered, i.e. larger study. We're going to have a brief break while you all catch your breath. And then we'll be going on to something else, which will be led by me, which is we'd like to open a bit of a conversation tonight about what is meaningful for you as participants in this study once we're thinking about recovery of erectile function. And that's intimate, it's very personal, we recognize that. We're grateful for your input on that as well, but we do think it's important to open that conversation. Really after that, we'll be bringing things to a close. A couple of ground rules. We're incredibly grateful for your involvement. We would also appreciate it if you remain respectful if you're chatting, and indeed if you turn off mute and say something. Respect is really at the center of how we behave to you, and we hope that you would maintain that to one another. And secondly, just a little asterisk to say that tonight's not about individual care. We are very, very pleased to be contacted, and we have our contact details up at the end about your individual care in the future should the need occur. But today is about the study on the whole and not any one person's care. So please don't ask questions about that. What's the point of this evening? Well, your input shapes the future of our study. This is the write-up from the last one. We asked men whether an extra 45 minutes under general anaesthetic would be acceptable to them if it were to undergo the NeuroSAFE technique, and they clearly told us that it was. And that really, in a sense, gave us a green light to move forward. There's other points to this evening as well. In a big way, it is to say thank you to you men for your participation. We are patient-centered research. that means that if we don't have patients, we don't have you, we have nothing at all. So it's a feedback loop. We understand it's really important to keep you abreast of what we're doing and what we're finding. Second matter is we take pride in our work, and we are proud to share with you our results. We're proud that you would join us in the first place, and we're also proud to be an NHS organisation. The NHS leads the world in randomised clinical research. You only have to look at recent results from COVID to evidence that, and it's building upon the trust between the British public and NHS organisations that we're in any way able to run studies which are the envy of the world in terms of their rigour and what they add to the world's understanding of, in this instance, prostate cancer care. As you'll see, we're very much interested in getting some directions or some feedback from the conversation about areas of interest for future research. And lastly, it's important to show that we're engaging in this activity for our research authorities and some of the people who provide us with the money for us to continue. Without further ado, I'll hand you across to Greg, who's just beside me here, and he's going to take you through for the next 10 minutes some of the results from the feasibility study. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks very much, Owen. It was nice to hear some familiar names there. Many of you I know very intimately, inside and out, you might say. So I hope you're all doing all right. And I'm going to run you through some of the results from the feasibility study. So the feasibility study is part of a clinical trial, which is, it allows us to get a sense of whether we can carry out a larger scale study. So we've broken it up into two bits. So the first bit, the feasibility bit, is aimed at working out, can we run a study? Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with the concept of NeuroSAFE. So this diagram shows you a picture of a prostate in cross-section, this thing with the P, and around the outside are these grey layers, these sheets, and running within them are the yellow structures. Those are the nerves that control the erections. And so we want to be able to spare the nerves and peel those nerves away from the prostate, taking the cancer away, but leaving the nerves so that men can be potent after their surgery. And this next diagram really shows you how intimately those nerves are associated. So these little pictures here show that when you cut through and look under the microscope, the nerves are actually right in the capsule of the prostate. And so they're quite difficult to spare. And you realize that by sparing the nerves, you're really getting very close to the meat of the prostate where the cancer is. This slide is to show that we know that if men have nerves spared, then they tend to be more potent. So just to explain this graph, this is a cohort of men from a different study. On the left, you can see men who've not had any nerve sparing. And this is the proportion of them who are able to have sexual intercourse because their erections are adequate. And you can see that if they don't have a nerve spare, that very rarely happens. At the other end of the scale, you can see that men who have our best possible nerve spare have a good chance of being sexually potent. So we try and nerve spare where we can, but unfortunately, as you can see by the numbers, which show you the numbers of men who had each approach to nerve sparing, when you get up towards the better nerve spare, the numbers are quite few. So not many men get that best possible nerve spare, unfortunately. And you might argue that that's maybe because the cancers tend to be coming out of the prostate to where the nerves are, like this thing marked T3, indicating the stage here on the right side. Most of the time though, in fact, in 70% of the patients who were in the paper that I just described, the tumours contained well within the prostate, and it's only about 30% where it's starting to come out. So men who could have a nerve spare are not having it, and that largely reflects the fact that the MRI tends to overcall things. We're told we can't nerve spare based on an MRI. So we identified this technique, this frozen section NeuroSAFE technique, that allows us to at least try and nerve spare and do away with that, that error that's inherent to the MRI. So this is how the NeuroSAFE proof study was set up. There's a 1:1 randomization. So when you join the study, you're allocated to one of two groups randomly, can't be influenced by us. It's done very officially and off-site. And you're not informed whether you've had NeuroSAFE or not. And this is to maintain the integrity of the study so the results are valid. We don't want to put all this effort in to come out without an answer. What we want to know is this technique going to be of value to men who are being treated within the NHS? So with the NeuroSAFE feasibility phase, we really wanted to see that there was a desire to take part. And thank you to the men who've done that, many of you who are dialed in here. This curve shows you the recruitment curve. So the darker line at the bottom shows you what we thought we might be able to do in terms of recruitment. And you can see that we recruited well ahead of target, and we managed to hit our target of 50 patients in just 8 months. And this shows the demand that's out there in the community, men who are potent, men who want to maintain their potency and are willing to give back and participate in studies like this so that we can get the answer. So here are some results, and I'm not going to show you all of the results from the study because some of it is still embargoed, it's sensitive, it's not definitive, and we don't want to steal our own thunder or do away with the viability of the study by presenting things which aren't complete. So I'll give you a few bits of information that are important and pertinent, but not the whole story. So here you can see in this table, the table showing men who were in the standard arm and men who were in the NeuroSAFE arm, how many of them, what proportion had any sort of nerve spare. So they either had a nerve spare or not. Now, 60% of men had some degree of nerve spare with our standard approach, and that was increased to almost 90%. So 1.5 times the number of men had some nerve sparing. That gives them a chance at least. When I'm talking about the best possible nerve spare, where we get very close and spare all the nerves on both sides, you can see that using NeuroSAFE, we were able to achieve this in almost twice as many men. So this was very encouraging. This gives us a signal. It says that if we conduct this full study, that we'll probably show a difference. And it gives us an idea how many men we would need to involve to be able to do that. The downside to this is that it takes time and effort to do NeuroSAFE. Here you can see the mean operative time for the 2 arms. So in the standard arm, it took on average 2 and a bit hours. And in NeuroSAFE, it was just over 3. So about an additional hour. And during that time, there are lots of people involved doing the complicated cut-up and analysis that my colleagues, Eamon and Sarah, will perhaps tell you a little bit more about for the NeuroSAFE procedure. When we do this technique, what we're trying to do is, using a very quick test, an hour is very quick in the pathology world, can we make an approximation to what the definitive answer is? So by painting the prostate and cutting through these little sections and then generating slides within an hour, which we show to the pathologist, can we get a good idea what's genuinely the case? And this is the concordance. So we really want to see that what we're doing rapidly is in concordance with what we're doing in the longer term. So we want these numbers to be up around 100%. And as you can see, I'm pleased to say that in the 250 sections that we analysed from the 25 men, the agreement was extremely good. So we are getting the right answer as to whether the nerves seem to be involved in that particular patient. So this has all been very encouraging. We've now used the momentum that we built with your help, with your desire, and we've run into a full trial. We've published our protocol amongst other papers, and we've shown that we can recruit to this study. We've used the feasibility study to fine-tune the way we collect data and also inform on the power calculation. That means tell us how many men we need to get a definitive answer. And it's been a rehearsal, a dress rehearsal, if you like. So we've fine-tuned the things. We've made it so that it's as easy as possible for men. We've listened to your feedback. We've identified some problems and hopefully corrected them so that the full study runs seamlessly and successfully. We've also been fortunate enough to be awarded funding for the full study. So the feasibility was done with a grant from the NIHR, who are the NHS's research arm, a little bit of help from Orchid, and then JP Moulton's Charitable Foundation, having seen our preliminary data, were interested in the study, and they provided nearly £750,000 for the definitive study. So we're very grateful for them. This is the team. Before I hand over to Eamon, this is the team at UCL. We are also working with teams from around the UK. For the feasibility study, we were joined by surgeons and pathologists from Bristol, and it was conducted at these 2 sites. But thank you very much once again for your attention. Now I'm going to hand over to Eamon, if that's okay. Oops. Bear with me a second. There we are. Okay, Eamon. Mrs. Amon, she's a consultant pathologist who, has been involved in the cut-up and the processing of the samples throughout the whole study. She's joined by her colleague, Sarah.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's really exciting to be still here at the end of these 2 years with the NeuroSAFE team. I started 2 years ago as a fellow in NeuroSAFE and went to the Martini Clinic in Hamburg to learn about the technique and train in the technique. We brought the technique back to the NHS, and let me take you through a journey of the technique at UCLH. So we have now evaluated, standardized, and established reporting proformas for the NeuroSAFE proof technique in our pathology department. The main hurdles were to convince consultant pathologists to give that extra 1 hour of their time and convince them that this is for patient benefit. So from one pathologist liaising with biomedical scientists, laboratory staff, managers, surgeons on one side, and consultant pathologists on the other side, we have now grown to a team of 5 specialized urological pathologists who are on board the NeuroSAFE proof feasibility study. And when we started, we were doing 1 case per week for the initial 6 to 8 months of the study. But with increasing growth and capacity, we are now doing 2 to 3 cases every week. So the reporting proformas have now been standardized not just at UCLH, but we've gone multi-center and multi-site and have trained biomedical scientists and consultant pathologists at Bristol, Sheffield, and Glasgow. Every time these centers recruited their first case, we have gone personally to do a quality assurance and check of the technique being performed in these sites as well. And we also conducted training days at UCLH for different sites to come over and engage in the technique. What are our results like? Our results are, I can't share the next.
I press on the.
Sorry.
That's that one. Okay.
So like Greg said, our results are promising. They're reassuring in alignment with what we've seen previously in the Martini Clinic. And this involved 3 pathologists from 2 different sites looking at all those 250 slides, which were done in the feasibility study. And during the course of this study, we've seen many, many happy days where if you see the diagram on it's a picture, in fact, of a frozen section on the right-hand side with a margin that has been painted yellow by the surgeon in theaters. And we've actually evaluated that in the slide. We've seen many, many happy days where this margin did not have any tumor, and Greg could leave the nerves behind in the patient even when he thought he couldn't before the surgery. So what's next? We've standardized the procedure to within an hour, but we're constantly looking to improve ways of speed and efficiency to provide better results for better patient management for our surgeons, our researchers, and ultimately our patients. And in that effort, we've gone international and collaborated with the University of Modena, where they have used what's called a confocal microscope for the first time in prostate tissue. What are the advantages of this confocal microscope? We hope that the benefit will be that we will be able to bypass a lot of bottlenecks that we have within our laboratory. What you see in this picture is 3 different dyes in which a tissue is dipped. Unlike what you saw previously, we cut the tissue, stain the tissue, make the slides, and then examine the slides. But in a confocal microscope, we just dip the tissue in these 3 dyes for a couple of seconds and try and generate an image which is similar to that seen in the frozen section slides. So we're hoping that this shorter procedure we can cut short the time to under 20 minutes. And we look at opening this expertise to more men and increase our capacity from the 2 to 3 cases to many more so that patients can benefit. What next? I think we can't move forward. Like, I started as a fellow in this trial, and I've ended up being a consultant pathologist in urological pathology at UCLH. We have to train the next generation of pathologists. So I hand over now to Sarah Toomey, who's my registrar and extremely interested in the confocal project. And she will tell you about where we are now with the confocal microscope.
Thank you very much, Eamon. Hello, everybody. So we have been successful in procuring a confocal microscope here at UCLH, and we found a place for it in our new lab. A few of us have began training and experimenting, and we've generated some very nice pictures, which actually are very similar to the pictures used in the frozen section in the NeuroSAFE trial, but generated in much shorter time. And we are hoping that in the future we can standardize, protocolize, and evaluate this new technique so that it can be used for the benefit of patients in urology, but also across other specialties as well. And to truly evaluate how effective this technique is, and if it is effective, to then change what people are doing all around the world, we have to have a carefully formed plan going forwards, just like the team had with the NeuroSAFE feasibility study. And this quote we have here: "What good is an idea if it remains an idea? Try, experiment, iterate, fail, try again, and change the world." And that's just what we're trying to do here with this trial going forwards. So now I'm going to hand over to Jack, who is trial manager, and Rosie, our research nurse, to continue the talk. Thank you.
So we're going to try and squeeze us both in here somehow. Right. So an update on where are we now. So Greg gave us an overview of the feasibility study, and we are now onto the full whack, the full study. What and who am I? So I have two hats. I'm the NeuroSAFE UCLH trial practitioner. You would have seen me sort of lurking in the background of your clinic rooms with Greg whilst we take consent and I randomize you. That's usually where I'm sitting. My other hat is as a trial manager. So a lot of stuff goes on in the background of trials. There's an enormous amount of paperwork, and there's a huge amount of collaboration, and it's a national study, so we work across 4 centres now. As Greg mentioned, the feasibility had 2. It had UCLH and Bristol, and we're now pushing for 5 centres, so it's really ramping up. So my day-to-day activities are a huge number of emails, usually, but we collaborate with statisticians, R&D departments, nurses, doctors, and we all collaborate together to basically bring this trial to fruition. So Rosie, a little bit about who you are.
Hello, I'm Rosie. I'm a relatively new member of the team. I am the new research nurse. I'm the one that's been bothering you all with emails about this lovely event. A lot of my time at the moment is, a lot of it is data entry, so whether that's histology, your PSAs, so putting that all in our database. We have an Excel spreadsheet on with all you lovely participants on it, so making sure that you're all up to date with your questionnaires, with your appointments. So I'm the one who's taking that all on. And then in half my time, I'm actually a recovery nurse. So I will often recover patients who's undergone NeuroSAFE, so when they first wake up from surgery.
Cool. So I really like this diagram. It is clearly a national effort here. A lovely spread of the UK. We've got, like I said, four up and running centres now. After COVID, we've only got 2 currently running, but the other 2 are very shortly behind. And sneaky peek, we're looking to get 1 more centre up and running, so we're going to get 5. An interesting graph here. So this is robotic prostatectomies across the UK in 2019. So this is basically a cross-section of all of the robotics that were done. Here is an average of 93, and the centres that we are using in Bristol, 218, considerably higher, 278 Sheffield, also higher. Scotland, it was Scotland was not included, but based on their website, they did 300 in 2019. UCH 573 where we are now. So we got a record. And then Guy's also a considerable number of RALPs with 277. What is really nice is you can see we're right on the right-hand side of the graph there. So we are basically a very RALP-centric trial, obviously. So lots of RALPs are done. One of the coolest things I think about this study is that we are the only prospective randomized controlled trial in RALPs ever. And we're also the only one to basically center its research around erectile function recovery, which Owen will be talking to you about a bit later on. COVID happened. This is our current recruitment graph. We are still above the recruitment that we wanted to have at this stage because you guys are brilliant at getting involved with the trial. COVID happened around March 2020, and we reopened towards the end of June. So we did have a bit of a lull, but we are still well and truly where we want to be. We're very happy at the speed at which we managed to reopen. So we are up and running again. Like I said, we're still waiting for the other two centers to catch up. NeuroSAFE during COVID, it looked like it was going to be pretty bleak at first. No face-to-face clinics. We didn't want you guys to get sick, which would have meant no data. And with no data comes no trial, or at least it seemed that way. So what we ended up doing is moving to, as you will know by now, telephone clinics. Lots of calls from Owen. Rosie will be doing a few of those too. And lots of posts. You guys have been brilliant with the posts. So this here, questionnaires, is the picture of the floor of my flat, basically a questionnaire factory. But more importantly, you guys have been fantastic at sending it back. The return rate has been around 90%, which is just astounding. It's really, I mean, we would not have a trial without you guys' responses. Speaking of which, so what do we do with your questionnaire responses? I'll give that to you.
Yes, thank you so much. When you've been so good at getting our responses, giving your responses back to us, because we enter them painstakingly into our lovely database, so that we go through each question one by one, put in your responses, and then we're able to use that data. So obviously, when we, if we didn't have your questionnaires, we wouldn't have any data, and as Jack said, no data, no trial. So it's very core, very fundamental to us that we get those questionnaires back from you. So thank you so much for doing that.
Cool. Next steps, where do we go now? So the feasibility is finished. We're looking for around another 400 participants. You saw our current recruitment curve earlier on, so we're getting there. We're getting a new recruitment center on board, and we've got some new bits and bobs coming about as a result of COVID. I suppose every cloud has a silver lining in the sense that we are now building a new database that will allow us to consent new patients online. So you guys won't need to put yourselves at unnecessary risk coming into clinic. No risk of spreading COVID between both patient and practitioner. E-questionnaires, you'll be happy to hear that we will be killing less trees. So there will be considerably less posts coming to you, but you will get the same questionnaires via email, so that should be nice and easy. This is an example of what we see. This is a dummy patient. I've put in my details here, but this is what our new database is going to look like on our end. So you won't see this, but this is what we're going to be using. So we can email you your questionnaires. It should be much easier, and it will sync directly to our database. It'll be a much faster, much easier process for everybody. NeuroSAFE was very fortunate to make it into the news. We made it into the Daily Mail, and we also made it into the Evening Standard. If you Google those, you should hopefully find us. Our funders, I think we have a couple of funders representatives on the line. We have to thank JP Moulton and the NIHR, both of those guys. I'm funded by JP Moulton. I couldn't do what I do without those guys. And in fact, the NeuroSAFE procedure costs £1,000 a case. So these guys are fundamental to running our trial, and we are very, very appreciative. This is, as was mentioned earlier, our website. Please do feel free to explore it, take a look. We have got two main videos on there. There is a video, animation video for you to kind of see what the surgery you had or will have, if there's any prospectives here, on the site. And there's also, if you're feeling a bit braver, an actual live surgery that you can watch. Please do keep in touch. This is our new Twitter handle here, if you use Twitter. And again, our website is below. Cheers, guys.
We'll hand back to Owen.
This is now into the bit which is about asking you, gentlemen, about what is important to you, and also a little. No, I want to go away from okay. It's also about giving a bit of information as well about what the main event in terms of the main outcome and the main endpoint for our study is. Oops, that goes back. So the main outcome which we were interested in the NeuroSAFE proof study, and this is the full study, not the feasibility study, is erectile function recovery. The feasibility study showed us that we could do this safely, that we could recruit men, and this would be a meaningful trial to partake in and to run, and that it wouldn't be a waste of money to try and get it up and running. And now we're hoping to provide real clarity as to whether the NeuroSAFE technique can indeed bring improvement to bear on the recovery of men in terms of their erectile function on following radical prostatectomy. I'd like to make a couple of messages before we go any further and ask of you your opinions and your perspectives on erectile function recovery. Just to reiterate, this is indeed personal and intimate information. We are incredibly grateful for your time and your input on this. There is no obligation to respond whatsoever. And I guess it's a moment to just repeat that message of respect. And then the last thing to say is that straw polls such as the one that we've just demonstrated with the football is not an in-depth analysis. In fact, it's almost difficult to run because I can't see whose finger is just hovering over the mouse and who's ready to respond and who would take another 5 minutes, and it's very difficult for me to get that. So I think we'll give it approximately 2 minutes for each question. But I would like to emphasize that we will be sending you links via email and QR code, and you can certainly contact us with your thoughts if you would like to as well. If you had any further feedback, if you had any further thoughts that you would like to share with us in writing rather than just a rudimentary tick box answer to questions that we've written ourselves. So with the NeuroSAFE technique, we want to save more nerves. Greg's mentioned that to you, and Eamon and Sarah are involved in helping us with that. The point of saving more nerves is that hopefully it might allow us to improve erectile function recovery. And indeed, this line graph here that you can see on the right does show you that even in our small numbers feasibility study, if you're in that green line and you've had both sides spared, your return of erectile function recovery is improved compared to if you've had the red line, which is only on one side, and certainly it's better than if you've had no nerve spared whatsoever. However, so the point of our study is erectile function. But what is recovery actually? And also, what is meaningful recovery to you as patients who are having these treatments and undergo these side effects and also entail some of the risks associated with having these treatments and these things as well. You may be surprised to hear that despite tens of thousands of radical prostatectomies, and especially in the Western world, the vast majority of these are now done using the robot as well, so robotic radical prostatectomies. And despite approximately 8,000 per year in the UK, that there is actually no consensus and certainly no standardized definition yet on what erectile function recovery after radical prostatectomy actually is. And to give you a flavor on that, this screenshot here is a systematic review and meta-analysis. That's a medical jargon terminology for trying to get together all the best studies that report on a particular question in medicine and then summarizing them. And so they did this looking at erectile function recovery after robot-assisted radical prostatectomy. And excuse me there if I'm not making sense, because potency is another way, it's synonymous with erectile function recovery. So I don't mean to confuse you there. And so systematic reviews are in the game of taking best evidence and trying to make it really simple. So the papers that would have been included in this review should represent the best and the most clear studies, of which there were 15 included. And within the 15 different studies, there were 6 different definitions of recovery, of erectile function recovery. And that's by which I just mean to show that this is why we are coming to you, our men, who mean the most to us, in order to ask, in a sense, for your help on answering or getting a steer on some of these questions. And of course, the other thing which runs throughout all of this is that the stated levels of recovery will be strongly influenced by the definition of recovery. So if you put the bar for recovery very, very high, then it may look like that very few men are recovering. But if in fact the bar can be moved slightly lower for a meaningful recovery in the circumstances of having had a radical prostatectomy and hopefully cancer curing surgery, then things will look different. So what are we using? Now, those of you that have even just been recruited and randomized, and certainly those of you that have undergone any follow-up studies will recognize this questionnaire. It's called the International Index of Erectile Function 15, because there's 15 questions. And you may even recognize some of these questions. There are 6 questions on erectile function, and there's a couple of, for instances on the right there. Question 1, how often were you able to get an erection during sexual activity? There's 2 questions on orgasmic function. There's questions on sexual desire and satisfaction of intercourse. And then there's 2 final questions on overall satisfaction, sexual satisfaction. And you can see some examples of those that popped up at the same time. And also, I would say that that the answers are sometimes a little unusual, but on the whole, they try to get a grip on a man's erectile function and also sexual satisfaction. The benefits of using forms like this is that they are patient reported. So in theory, they should come straight from your lived experience into the estimation of the results of our endeavors. And I've popped this doctor here with a stethoscope and a man next to her, because sometimes the actual results can be influenced either by the vested interests of the doctors who are asking the questions, if they're reporting the answers, or sometimes indeed the desire of the patients to provide the answers that they think that the doctor's wants. So that's the benefit of using questionnaires such as this, but we do recognize that they have limitations as well, and we want to go into some of those now. And even when using some of these standardized forms with the 15 questions, even when using these, and they've been around since 1997 was the first development of this questionnaire, there's still no standard definitions for what recovery should be defined as. So that's where we come to you guys, and that's why I'm particularly excited and frankly proud to see that there's 38 members of the NeuroSAFE community logged on to help us with some of these questions. So question 1 for you guys, which we'd like to put to you. Oral medications. Do you feel that it is, and I'm just going to try and get the polling question up to launch, go away, Chelsea. Yeah, so these are questions 1A and 1B. So do you think that men, when they are considering their answers to the 15 questions of the questionnaire that we ask about erectile function, do you think that oral medications should be taken into account and allowed for in the answers or not? And the second arm to that one is, do you think that the use of injections such as Cavaject, the vacuum pump, the rings which are necessary to maintain erections once using the vacuum pump, or prostheses, which means further surgery, should be taken into account when we're answering the questions for recovery of erectile function? Thanks for your responses. I can see them coming in now. That is interesting. So, and I guess to just, I'll talk over whilst we're waiting for a few more people to respond, but not very many. The oral medications, which some of you will be familiar with, and we're familiar with as a team of doctors looking after you, things like sildenafil at the low dose and the high dose, and that's also known as Viagra. And tadalafil is one of the other formulations. And the injections, there's intracavernosal injections, such as Cavaject. The pumps, many of you will be familiar with, but I don't think many of you have gone on to have further surgery yet, from my experience. Okay, thank you. We'll call it. We'll call that original poll there. That's very, very helpful. Thank you very much. Moving forward. So, thinking about these questions, the 15 questions in total, and I've screenshotted there. I've copied so that you get an idea and jog your memory of responding to these questions. Do you think you would prefer the definition of erectile function recovery to be based on the answer to, and there's 4 options now when I launch the poll, all 15 questions? Do you think one question would be enough? Or do you think that not all the questions are important, but more than one question would be beneficial? Or again, it's quite possible and totally reasonable for you to say that you don't know. And I'll try and launch the poll again now. If I can I do that? Polling. Thank you. Thanks for your patience. I'm sorry now. Here we go. Launch the poll. Thank you very much. 23 out of 34 have voted, and we've got a couple of screens on here in the room as well, so we're not waiting for everybody. But that is really very interesting. Thank you very much. We'll call that one there again. Good. And Dan's just messaged me, so you can't see if you want to share results. I see. Okay, fine. Thanks, Dan. Okay, I'm going to share the results with you here. Okay, can you see that? Can you see the results there, guys? Can you see the results?
Yeah, we can see them.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Thanks, Dan. Okay, so 44% of the respondents felt that all 15 questions, only 2 people thought one question should be enough, and 41% of people felt that not all the questions were appropriate or important, rather. But more than one question would be a good idea. Okay, I'll stop sharing that with you for now, and we'll go on to the next question. So the reason behind this question particularly is because many definitions of erectile function recovery are centered around erections sufficient for penetrative intercourse. And as a result, that often features in the results which are presented by researchers from around the world who look into radical prostatectomy and their patients' experience. So, but if we were to follow that line of inquiry, or perhaps bring together a certain number of questions on that feature of penetrative intercourse, our question to you is where we would set that bar for the inverted commas definition of recovery, and would you define a minimum level of satisfactory recovery when penetration is possible? And I'm just about to launch the options on the poll in a moment. Every time, most of the time, about half of the time, less than half of the time, but more than never. And the last option is that in fact, actually, the feature of penetration during intercourse and sexual recovery isn't of great importance to you. So, oh, did I go back? Oh, I've missed one. Oh, sorry, guys. I think I've gone too far. Excuse me. I'm really sorry. I've jumped the gun there. We're going back one slide. So actually, that's right. So ahead of asking you about the frequency of that, we would like to get a feel as to whether penetrative intercourse is actually an important element with regards to erectile function recovery. And so the question is, regarding the definition of erectile function recovery, do you think that penetration should be included? penetration is all that should be included, and penetration is not so important for you, or you don't know. And I've just launched that questionnaire there again, and as before, we'll be incredibly grateful for your for your thoughts. Can I share this? Is it shared?
If we want to keep the results.
Okay, cool, thanks. Good, okay, so that's, so I'm going to share those results with you, and it seems that most people feel that penetration should be included. There's one person that thinks that's the only thing there, but there is a significant minority, 22% of people feel that it's not a great importance in that. So I'll stop sharing that with you. Good. And on to the next question, which you've already had a sneak preview of that. If penetration was to be used in the definition, and what is the minimum level of satisfactory recovery when penetration is possible? And would it be A, every time, B, most of the time, C, about half of the time, D, less than half the time, but more than never? And again, option E is there as well if you feel that it's not an important element. And I'm just about to launch this poll for you. Thanks again in advance for your participation. There you go. I think 25 out of 34 is pretty close to 26, 27. Excellent. Okay. So thanks. I'm ending that poll now, and I'll share the results with you. And most of the time seems to be the winning option here. And I think I'll let you digest those results yourself. Okay. Stop sharing. There's only one question left, guys, and this one needs a bit of an explanation around. So when I say, I'll just read it out loud first, and then I'll give you the explanation. So a cutoff value for the overall score is a good way to define recovery. And what I mean by a cutoff score is the addition of the different answers that you've given in a 1 to 5 fashion, and then you add them all together, and you have a maximum score would be 25, and a minimum score would be a 0. And whether you think that actually, or if we consider that all of the answers to the questions are in some way important, and that we have an ability to set a threshold above which and below which we define recovery. And indeed, we use this as a technique to assess your eligibility for inclusion in the NeuroSAFE study in the first instance. So, and the question to you is whether you think that this is a valuable way to assess and to define recovery. So I'm just about to launch the last question for you, which is a cutoff value for the overall score is a good way to define recovery. And the 3 options are I agree, I disagree, or I'm not sure. And just as before, thanks as ever again for your involvement. Okay, so thank you. There we see that just the smallest of majorities, 52% of people agree with that, and whereas 30% of people are not in agreement. I would actually, that's a very interesting finding for us, and thank you for sharing that with us. I'd like to take the opportunity just to repeat again what we said before, which is that we would be ever so grateful if you would follow the links, and we will send you some of the URL links, and perhaps provide us with some more of your written thoughts that we can go away and think about in the future. But really, now we are getting very close to the end of this, certainly of the interactive session, and indeed the whole PPI event. So it's for me really to start the closing remarks. I hope you can tell from the enthusiasm of everybody here in this room, myself, definitely Greg, our pathologists and our research team, that we are incredibly grateful for your input. We are incredibly grateful for your participation in our study, without which there would be no study. And we hope that you can tell that we care about one thing and one thing only within NeuroSAFE Proof, and that is improving outcomes for you men who put your trust in us to have radical prostatectomy in order to treat your prostate cancer. So thanks for joining us on the journey, and thanks for joining us this evening. We hope that you found it interesting, and there's the opportunity to provide feedback in the forms that we're going to give you to tell us whether you did think it was interesting, what you thought was particularly interesting, indeed what you'd like to see more of if we were going to run more of these evenings. And as I've mentioned, there's a little bit of space to put your own words down there as well, which I mean, I'm hungry to see your thoughts. I'm going to go away and peer over this, you know, much to my family and friends' distraction. My contact address is up there in lights. The NeuroSAFE account website email address is there as well. Rosie's email address, she's also a very good point of clinical contact if you have any clinical concerns, and we do encourage you to go and hit up our NeuroSAFE Proof website as well. I think here, these are the forms. I wouldn't copy the thing, but if you have a smartphone which can read a QR code, take a picture of that there now at this moment, and that will direct you to the Microsoft Forms. Otherwise, we know who's come on board, and we know who to send you these forms to. We're not going to send them to anybody else because we have taken your participation in this evening as consent to be involved in answering and asking these questions. And I would say I've just got one more thing to do. Yeah, so let me just say a couple more things. First of all, if you, for those of you that don't know how to use QR code, you just go to if you've got an iPhone, if you've got a new iPhone, you just go to the camera and just wave the camera at the QR code, and it will give you a prompt to follow it, and it'll take you to the link. The last thing I want to do is, again, I think you get the picture that we're really grateful for your involvement. And to evidence that, we had some of our co-workers have been working behind the scenes to take screenshots of you all, which I'm going to try and transfer into the last slide of the of the presentation to show you that we're incredibly grateful for your being. Thank you very, very much for your involvement again. And it's been an absolute pleasure to see some of you who have even come off trial at this stage. I think we're probably, I'm not sure we have a great deal of time for questions, but I might just invite Greg back on to say cheerio as well, seeing as he really is the main man. Yeah.
Thanks, Owen. Hi, guys. Thank you very much for participating. I'm sure we've generated some really important data, and we will use that to make the study better. It's nice to see your faces, and those of you who've sent queries to me, I will address them individually. I look forward to catching up with some of you in the clinic, but we'll call it a day there. Owen, do you need anything else from me? In which case, all the best, gentlemen. Thanks for your attention. Bye-bye.